Best of the Mumsnet thread about embarrassing things children have said in public. Friends of my parents were at a nativity play last year to see their grandson, about 4 years old at the time. He had really wanted to play Joseph from the beginning, but had been given the part of the innkeeper. Anyway, he seemed to have gotten over his disappointment. On the night of the play, Joseph and Mary knock on the door of the inn to ask for a room. The innkeeper opened the door and said, at the top of his voice, "Duck off, Joseph. Mummy, I've finished." As she backs out of the toilet into the doctor's waiting room, pooey bottom in the air. Dee, age 2, in shopping center, stops right in front of large man with mop of red hair, beard and glasses, points and says loudly in incredulous voice, "Look, Mummy. What is that animal?" Fortunately, he saw the funny side. Also age 2, meeting my husband's bosses and colleagues for first time at Christmas drinks do, pulls up her top and says to the general crowd, "Look. I've got tiny nipples. Mummy's got big nipples." Then tries to pull down my lowish cut top to try to demonstrate. Mortified, I hastily try to distract and send her in the direction of snacks, only to turn round a moment later to realize she is now demanding to know the size of everyone else's nipples and attempting to get visual verification. And the old classic, whilst potty training, her walking back through crowded restaurant, with her singing "Mummy did a poo-o. Well done, Mummy," accompanied by her clapping me loudly. DS 2.3 did a classic a few months ago. We were in the queue waiting to pay for groceries and the man in front of us farted. Judging by the little startled jerk he did, it was one of those "oops, it slipped out" ones, but it was still rather loud. DS points at his back and says in his loudest toddler voice, "You toot." QJM, wanting to sink into a deep hole in the ground. I distinctly heard several snickers around us. The man turned around with a very red face, looked at DS's extremely happy smile, and said, "I did, little man, sorry." What a lovely way to handle it. I apologized profusely. He waved away my apology and just said, "What can I say? I did, kids, eh?" My brother toddled into my mum's Tupperware party, attended by various members of the PTA, wearing a sanitary towel across his face. He loudly proclaimed, "Look, Mummy. I am a sturgeon." Everyone just carried on examining the plastic, trying to ignore the small boy with a sanitary towel hooked around his ears. It wasn't my child, though they have said some funny things. It was beautiful little Irish girl on a train with her dad with lovely red curls. She was standing up talking to us, we were on the chairs behind, and it was before we had kids. She said, "My ma says I have a lovely head of hair." I said, "She's right, you do." She said, "I don't get it from daddy, look at him, he's no hair on his head at all." She was right, bald as a coot. The whole carriage could hear this conversation, and poor daddy's head soon matched the color of her hair. My Dee was about 2 at the time. We'd just been shopping at the supermarket, and had just got back to the car. Just before I started packing the shopping away, she said in a very loud voice, "Please don't put me in the boot, Mummy." Luckily the nearby woman thought it was funny. "Daddy, you're a cook," shouted very loudly in a crowded car park. We had just been discussing the difference between peacocks, male, and peahens, female. So, in her 5-year-old logic, she turns to me and says, "Mummy, you're a hen," and then, because Daddy was walking ahead of us, found it necessary to shout the above. We have never been so red-faced as we were that day. 3-year-old DS, looking at a baby in a pram, shouts at me across school playground, "Mummy, can we go home and make a baby?" Lady on bus, "Where's Daddy today?" 3-year-old, "He's doing a poo." My poo was a Coke one last time. "Oh look, Mummy, a pirate man with eye patch walks past." Just remembered another, DD age 2 to the HV on home visit, "Me got poo on Ms. new jammies. Got poo all over Ms. bed. Got poo all over Ms. wall." I and hurriedly explained her obsession with Winnie the Pooh, and her new bedroom makeover. Having just moved into her new room to make room for baby Didi too. My son, now 18, once loudly shouted out in Dorothy Perkins, "Mumi, you're leaving without paying." I had a pair of sunglasses in my hand and was heading to the shoe section. He has Asperger's in his defense, and he thought I was heading for the exit. Stickler for the rules, my boy. I was followed by the store detective for the rest of my peruse round DP. Hope you are enjoying today's video from Mother's Narrative Network. Please like, comment and subscribe for more daily uploads. Don't forget to click the notification bell. I've been reading this for so long, all my family have deserted me and gone to bed, and I haven't emptied the washing machine. Didi, age 3, has managed a couple of great ones recently. We were walking along near our house, and she pointed at this man, and said loudly, "Is that my daddy?" Luckily he laughed. Only a week or so ago, we'd been out on the train, and were walking out of the station, and there was a large, and not terribly attractive woman walking behind us. Didi looked behind and saw her and said really loudly, "Mummy, there's a monster following us." I pretended I hadn't heard. She also came up with a great non-verbal one in Tesco's. I was looking at something and a young, quite alternative-looking couple of teenagers stood next to us. She pointed at them and they just looked at me with an expression of pure, "Would you look at that?" The girl looked quite hurt and her boyfriend put a protective arm around her, and I scuttled off with my child craning over my arm trying to stare at them. When DS sees women in the street with short hair, he very kindly stops, pokes them and says, "Hello man," and if I dare correct him, "No DS, that SA lady with short hair, no, mummy, it's a man." DS, aged about 1 and just starting to name animals, in a cafe with a bit of a rural theme, sees a picture of a chicken, cook. Cook, 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 cook. Cook. Best bit was that I had nipped to the loo, leaving him with my friend, and came back to find all the old dears in the place staring at them in amused horror. Oh, I have just remembered the best one. Didi, age 3. I was in a restaurant where you went straight into the toilets. Me. Which toilet should we go into, darling? One door has M4, Didi, male. Me, yes darling, well done. And F4. Didi, in the sweetest little voice, duck. DS is 22 months, and has a habit of shouting "cook cook, chocolate," when we are out and he wants a snack. I'm fed up with explaining this one. Also a couple of weeks ago, he asked for more genies now, Genie being 9-week-old, at the time, Didi. I posted this on FB to be told by my 5 years younger sister that I had better not get PG again, as I was stealing all the glory. WTF, it took DH, and I 5 years to conceive DS, and I am the eldest of 4. She on the other hand is on her second marriage, back living with my mum and dad as she cannot afford her mortgage and gets more for renting it out. Anne is 2 years into her nursing training, while her husband doesn't work. Sorry, little rant there, which I needed to get off my chest. I'm loving the duck off ones. I have been telling DH he needs to tone down his language, because I do not want to have to deal with the in public, or with the CM. My friend's DS, age 3, "Mummy, when you die, I can go and live with Nana and have sweets." My widowed pal is in rude health, but is now almost suspecting her MIL of some dreadful plot. PMSL at some of these. Always told Didi I would explain anything she asked me, thought we had got past the worst relatively unscathed. Age 10, big queue in Sainsbury's. "Mum, what's an orgasm?" That's what you get for leaving mags with problem pages in lying around. Slightly off topic, DSS 5, to DH as he dried himself after a bath. "Dad, your balls look like a dog's." Tonight out for a meal, coming back from the loo with Didi, 2:9, and walking through the tables. I did poo in a Chinese restaurant, lovely dear. We went out for a meal a few weeks ago, and the waitress had terrible adult acne. DS asked really loudly, "Does that lady have chicken pox?" On the beach he asked a man, who was rather large, if he had eaten all the pies as he had large boobies. And he didn't like it. My sister used to work at a nursery, and a little girl there was always overdressed, big flouncy dresses, blonde ringlets. She skipped up to my sister one day with her hands behind her back. There's my sister thinking, oh, what an angelic looking child. Isn't she cute? She then announced with a big smile, I've just pissed myself. Even at the advanced age of 10, DS1 still comes out with some crackers. One day we were out and he told his brother, when mum and dad die I'll inherit everything because I'm the oldest. Had to break it to him gently that he was not the bally Duke of Richmond and would be sharing whatever pauper's pittance was left. Another time, he became aware of some news item that totted up the cost of raising a child, however many thousands it was, and asked me rather worriedly, is that a loan or a gift? My eldest DS1, who is 3.5, comes out with some corkers. He is old before his time, bless him. Went to Tesco's Loos the other week. As soon as he sees Tesco's, it's need a wee. So we go to the Loos and I think I may as well go, as was going to be in town for some time. Anyway, he had his wee, then was waiting for me and shouted loudly, DS1, you have poo. Me, no, just a wee. DS1, no, you poo. I was mortified. Another time, when I was part-time at work, I went to pick DS1 up from preschool in car. We got home to DH, and DS2, too, and DS1 runs into house saying mummy pushed me out of car. I did no such thing. In January, the kid stayed with my dad for the weekend and he told my dad that daddy had fallen down the stairs with him and cut his head. Also, he is currently in Scotland with MIL for 2 weeks, and as she has a small holding of animals including hens, ducks, sheep, etc., he goes into the pen every morning with his overalls and wellies on and says, hello ladies, while he collects the eggs, and then when he leaves he says thank you ladies. When my DS was 2 he couldn't say the L in clock. We were visiting a school at the time, and of course in every room there was a clock. He proudly pointed at every one and said really loudly, clock. I kept saying tick-tock, but he kept saying the same word. Afterwards the teacher said that his speech was really good. I nearly wet myself. Another classic is that when I'm driving and have near misses I say Jesus. When we were at my Sil's church wedding, my DS asked his uncle who the man on the cross was. Of course he replied that it was Jesus. My DS turned to DH and said in hushed and shocked tones, Uncle James just said Jesus. Again, I had to stop myself from laughing, as did most of the people in the pews around us. Kids, got to love them. DS1 has a fascination with every car there is. Health visitor came earlier this week for 2 years, and 3 years checks on kids. Jack staring out the window at her car, and proceeds to shout to her, let me look at your fadge. Fadge, aka badge. He wanted to know what make her car was. Oh god, it was plain as day, and HV just laughed. On a packed train my DS, age 3, shouted, there are 3 really bad things you should never say mummy. Everyone turned and listened, so I muttered, then don't say them. He ignored me and shouted, they are stupid. Shut up. I breathed a sigh of relief, and off. Blush had to sit there for another 20 agonizing minutes. My 8-year-old watched 40-year-old me get out of the shower and then chirpily said, mummy, do you know, you've got a bottom like grandma's. Still traumatized, nearly 5 years later. When DD1 was about 4 we were walking down the road towards a lady coming in the opposite direction. The lady was of a large frame, and had long blonde hair, and very heavy makeup. Just as we got up to the lady my DD shouted out really loudly, mummy, is that a man? Blush. I just kept walking, but a little faster grin. I once took my 3-year-old to the opticians to get her glasses adjusted. The lady doing it had the worst fake 10 ever. The lady just nipped behind where we were waiting to use a machine, and my daughter shouted, where's that orange lady gone? Lots of shoulder shaking. I couldn't look her in the eye when she reappeared with the glasses. Love this thread. Both of these were my middle child, age about 2. I had bought his big sister some Barbies, and found it hard to get man dolls. So in desperation, I bought a talking Regan, and talking George Bush dolls since they were cheap and I figured they would make okay dad dolls. Only my son became weirdly attached to the Bush doll, and insisted on bringing it everywhere we went, naked. He would hold it up proudly to strangers and press a button to make it talk. It was a great relief when he stopped talking. Second thing, he had a toy frog that he was very fond of. His granda asked him what the froggy was called, and DS thought about it for a minute, then said, Cunt, his name Cunt. For some reason this was all said with a very Germanic pronunciation. Granda said weakly, Do you mean Kermit? And we all looked at DS hopefully. No, not Kermit, Cunt, he told us determinedly. And so it was, and Cunt the frog got hidden whenever anyone came over from then on. A few years ago, we went to an Indian restaurant with some of DH's friends and DC. After we finished, friends DS, aged about 7, ordered an ice cream in the shape of a duck called a quacky. Just as the waiter was bringing it over, he decides to shout in his loudest voice, Mum, is this called a quacky? Cause it rhymes with P***key. Blush. Friend swore she had never used that word before and still to this day does not know where he picked it up from. DS1 was 3 and sat in the seat of a supermarket trolley. We were in the queue, and he started to talk to the lady next to us in a wheelchair. I've got one of those, he tells her, pointing at her wheelchair. Have you? She says kindly, what's wrong with your legs then? I had to explain he meant a pushchair, and there was nothing wrong with his legs other than he was a runner, and so had to be strapped into something for his own safety. DS2 likes repeating phrases. I was slightly shocked when he said, fuck Teddy Gilbert, over and over. When I asked where he heard that naughty word, he told me from Daddy. Cue me having a right go at DP, who claimed he'd never said fuck in front of DS2. That night whilst reading DS2 a bedtime story, it turns out he was actually saying smack Teddy Gilbert, from The Little Princess. I'm not sure whether I should explain to nursery. We were staying in a posh hotel in Scotland, with famous golf course, and DH had popped off to the loo while we waited in reception. DS aged 3 was looking around for him and suddenly pointed and shouted, Daddy, really loudly at a man walking towards us. It was actually the golfer Colin Montgomery, who legged it out of the hotel very quickly, while I turned crimson, and everyone else in the reception area wet themselves. DS also enjoys asking me if the person on the checkout is a man or a woman. Very loudly. Every time we go to the supermarket. Blush. My DN3 declined the offer of more food at her GM's house by saying, Mummy says I'm not to have that, otherwise I'll get fat like you. Shock. My sis's MIL, a typically Italian nonna who cooks mounds of food and is admittedly rather large, didn't speak to her for weeks. I think I may have posted this before, and although it was 14 years ago, when eldest Didi was 3, I still feel slight surge of panic when behind a larger lady in a queue. Didi1 said in a very loud voice, as we queued in Safeway, does that lady in front of us have a baby in her tummy? Or does she just eat lots of big dinners? Cue a ripple of snickering, me and the lady in question going scarlet, and a strong urge to crawl into a hole and never come out, having had 3 more DCS since then. There have been plenty more, but that remains the most mortifying in the zoo house. On the very crowded beach last week, Didi said while running over towards me, Mummy, I just did a wee in that puddle, tide was coming in, thank God. Cue me looking completely mortified. I didn't know where to look. Blush. When I was 3/4, I fell over in my grandparents' garden and grazed my face. I was on the bus and a lady said to me, what a pretty girl you are, but what have you done to your lovely face? Me, all big brown eyes and blonde ringlets, my mammy did it. Blush. My poor mammy nearly dislocated my shoulder dragging me off the bus. DS, when he was about 2.5, as my DH put him in the trolley at Asda, shouted, new daddy don't too wooch me. Ger pretended I wasn't with them. A friend of mine was at Sainsbury's with her DS age 3 who suddenly shouted, Mummy, Jesus is alive. Ooh, can we have some dunkers? Grin-o and my cousin, 20 and should really know better, had taught my DS to say boo ya when he's pleased with himself about something. Thank you for watching. Tell us your stories of the worst way you have been embarrassed in public. Before you go, please like, subscribe, and click the notification button to be notified about more daily uploads. Hope you enjoyed today's video.